Thank you for staying with us. My name is Abdiaziz Hashim. Welcome to Business Insight. Now we begin this coverage at JKIA, where the national carrier Kenya Airways KQ has joined a list of many other companies that have issued profit warnings for the financial year 2019. KQ, through a statement to the public and stakeholders, say it expects a drop of profits by more than 25% in the financial year ending December 31st, as our reporter Njeri Njogu tells us.
The board at KQ says that despite the airline experiencing a growth in revenue during the year, there was intensified competition that impacted the earnings. Due to the intensified competition, Kenya Airways says it was forced to make the changes on its pricing model so as to keep up with the competition from other players. Kenya Airways has been going through financial tribulations ever since it made a loss of more than 26 billion shillings. Kenya Airways has also attributed to the forecasted trend of the recent introduced International Financial Reporting Standards 16 rule. The IFRS requires financial statements to reflect both assets and liabilities. In 2018, KQ registered 114.45 billion shillings in revenue, but loss stood at 7.59 billion shillings from 6.4 billion shillings. The airline attributed parts of the loss on a sharp increase in fuel prices. With at least 25% drops in earnings this year, the airline is expected to rate it about 85.84 billion shillings. In a notice to the shareholders and public, KQ says its financial forecast has foreseen dwindled earnings occasioned by increased competition, which dealt with a blow on the pricing. Although Kenya Airways improved revenue growth in the year, profitability was constrained by increased competition in the airline area of operations, which in return has increased pressure on pricing in order to remain competitive. The board and the management are undertaking several key strategic initiatives to improve the final results of the company going forward in both 2019 and the years ahead. The profit warning comes 2 days after the airline picked Alan Kilavuka as acting CEO as Sebastian Miko's plans to exit at the end of December 2019. Njeri Njogu for Airways TV.
Now to our biggest earner, where agriculture is the key to Kenya's economy, contributing 26% of the gross domestic product. But according to agriculture stakeholders, despite generating about half of the country's GDP, many farmers grapple with problems every year that reduce their lives to more toil than reward.
Agriculture in Kenya mainly consists of small-scale farmers, which means they are the real backbone of our economy. Even so, they struggle to compete with nations with far less arable land like the Netherlands or far worse climates like Israel due to problems in everything from production to sales. Agriculture experts have noted that the African land can provide high quality and plentiful yields with a notable potential. Unfortunately, this potential remains largely untapped. Another huge challenge that farmers are facing is lack of adequate training and information on farming trends. This remains #1 problem facing most small-scale farmers in Kenya and Africa at large. Most, especially in rural areas, miss out on proper information on improved methods of farming, new technology, as well as information regarding cheap but effective farming practices.
The day we will accept that our problem is the farming systems, the day we'll accept that it's not always a quick fix of going to import cheap things, cheap maize, cheap fertilizer, cheap this, the day we'll accept as a country to have a grand plan. And the ministry has a plan. All we need to do is to accept that the arable land is an arable land in this country that has not been put in use. And when it's put in use in the wrong time. And I keep insisting, I don't know why government, for example, with all due respect, took maize to Galana Gulala. And you go growing maize in non-maize growing areas, you go throwing crops all over and expect to get results. There is hope. There is hope. Let's get innovative. Let's get technology. Let's accept that we have a challenge, and let's soberly have a conversation to be able to help us to go forward. I assure you we will get there, not today, not even tomorrow, but we must then be able to quickly work together and walk one step at a time towards the right direction.
Agriculture expert from the Fresh Consortium Board, Ojepat Okesegere, said it is paramount that farmers are trained on things like changing weather conditions for those relying on rain and the husbandry aspect of planting the correct variety of seeds. Citing the high cost of most agricultural lands in Africa, most farmers have no choice than to farm on the same pieces of lands over and over. A move, he says, will lead to land degradation, whereby fertile lands lose most of their nutrients and become unproductive or barren. The issue on poor markets is not exceptional for most farmers in Kenya and Africa at large. This has for decades affected the lives and living standards of millions of people. Further, he states that Kenyans need to understand and accept the current challenges regarding food production so as to shift focus on the issue of food availability for all households.
The Central Bank of Kenya has invited investors to buy a 5-year Treasury bond with an average interest payment of 11.49% per annum. The 25 billion shillings bond was initially auctioned on 13th of December. Thereby, investors raised 29.5 billion shillings. Treasury only took up 18.7 billion shillings of the funds raised and rejected the rest of the bids, which demanded exceedingly high interest payment. The agency is the bank in the market seeking to collect 9.7 billion shillings from the 5-year government bond that will be on sale for 2 days from 17th to the 19th of December. Investors are seeking high interest payment on bonds following the recent removal of the rate cap law. Elsewhere, unemployment is a major challenge that affects youth across Kenya. Approximately 800,000 young Kenyans enter the labor market every year, and youth unemployment is estimated to be as high as 35%. To reduce the number, Deputy President William Ruto has noted that the affordable housing project is one of the most suitable area of focus to involve young people.
According to economic experts, unemployment is a major challenge that affects youth across Kenya. Approximately 800,000 young Kenyans enter the labor market every year, and youth unemployment is estimated to be as high as 35% compared to the overall national unemployment rate of 10%. A recent report of a review commissioned by the World Bank and Kenya Vision 2030 shows that Kenya faces a significant unemployment problem, with youth being hit hardest. The report further states that the high unemployment is related to the overall investment climate in the country and the economy's low capacity to create new jobs. In line with this and tackling the issue of unemployment in the country, Deputy President William Ruto has stated that youth inclusivity is vital in all sectors. With this in mind, Deputy President William Ruto notes that it is important that the concept of affordable homes takes the youthful group and their needs into consideration, especially on the biting unemployment disaster in Kenya. With the government's plan to construct 300,000 additional affordable housing units in Kenya under the program of the Big Four agenda led by President Uhuru Kenyatta, Ruto notes that the project will see the youth involved in the construction project in order to make the most positive impact in the lives of the youth. According to World Bank, the housing deficit in Kenya stands at 2 million. The project, launched in January this year, aims to roll out 500,000 units by 2022 to try and plug the housing gap in the country. Wanjiro Maina, Ebru TV.
That have been on Elsewhere, the heavy rains that have been on the news causing pain and havoc across the country may not be all gloom and doom after all, as the torrents raised water levels in the Kenya's hydroelectric dams, enough to cut electricity prices by the biggest margin in 16 months. Homes and businesses will this month make a collective monthly savings above 1 billion in fuel cost charges compared to the month of May based on the average monthly consumption.
The recent heavy rainfall that continue pounding some parts of the country increased water levels in the country's hydroelectric dams, which have in turn reduced the use of expensive thermal power to record lows, cutting the fuel surcharge in December and part of January electricity bills from 3 shillings last month and 3 shillings and 75 cents in May. The 0 shillings and 35 cents unit drop in fuel surcharge, which is determined by the share of thermal power in the national electricity grids, is the largest cut since August 2018. At 2 shillings and 65 cents, homes and businesses will in December collectively make monthly savings of above 1 billion shillings in fuel cost charges compared to the month of May based on the average monthly consumption. The showers from the skies are also likely to wash away the numbers in the power bills even more, as the Meteorological Department has also forecast that the wet weather could persist until next week in some parts of the country. Energy Principal Secretary Joseph Njoroge said the relief would likely be sustained due to adequate water in the dams and the short period between now and the long rain season set to start in March. Kenya ranks 40th worldwide in EY's Renewable Energy Country Attractiveness Index, which was released in November. The 310 megawatts Turkana wind farm, which was switched on in October last year, accounted for 13.9% of Kenya's generation mix, up from 9.8% in June, said the electricity regulator. Share of hydropower has increased to 30.4% from 20.2% in April, while geothermal now accounts for 46.9% from 41.9% in April. Kenya has a target to remove all thermal power plants from the grid over the next 12 years. Winnie Lubembe for Ebru TV.
The Communications Authority has directed Telkom Kenya to speedily resolve the commercial dispute with Eaton Towers to avoid any further inconveniences to customers. This follows Eaton Towers switching off the telco's transmitters of a 255.6 million shillings debit. CA is scheduled to meet the two firms this week on the progress of the matter.
Eaton Towers says the move to switch off Telkom 49 communication site has not breached the terms of a standing commercial agreement between the two companies. According to Eaton, parts of the agreement term okays it to shut down services to the mobile network operator. The shutdown of the communication sites on the 7th of December affected at least 70 base transmitter stations and in effect affecting several customers in various parts of the country, both data and voice services, including text and mobile money. This saw the two disputing companies set up a meeting with the Communication Authority of Kenya to resolve the matter. As a result of the meeting, the authority directed Eaton Towers to restore services to Telkom with immediate effect and resolve the commercial dispute, warning of a possible strict measure in the matter. The services have since restored. CA Acting Director General Matthew Wanjau says in a statement, and I quote, "The condition requires a license to see and obtain written approval from the authority. Issue a reasonable advance notice to persons likely to be affected by the interruption or suspension of service." End of quote. The authority has further demanded that the parties take active steps to address the dispute and have to set out their master tower agreement abbreviated by the CA by close of business Monday. Section 23 and 47 of the Kenya Communication Act 1998 mandate the authority to protect users and consumers of communication service with regard to the prices, the quality and variety of those services.
Savings and Credit Cooperative Societies circles are expected to have a more competitive edge over commercial banks in the credit market. This follows the recent repeal of the rate cap law allowing commercial banks to review their rates upwards.
Stakeholders in SACCO societies say the removal of rate caps law portends more retail deposits as they traditionally offer better savings rates than commercial banks. Before the rate caps, SACCOs offered 4% in savings compared to less than 2% by banks. On lending, higher deposits motivate more borrowing from SACCOs, which because of competition and member-based decision-making cannot review their rates significantly upwards. SACCOs have traditionally been the lower cost route in terms of loan rates at about 12%. With the caps, banks were within SACCOs' leagues in lending rates. Now that caps have been removed, banks are expected to move lending rates higher, ideally meaning SACCOs will once again be competitive in loan rates. The Finance Bill 2019 was signed into law on 7th November 2019, repealing Section 33B of the Banking Act, which provided for the capping of interest rates at 4% above the central bank rate. The President's decision to repeal the interest rate cap was on the back of reduction of credit to the private sector, particularly the micro, small and medium enterprises. Figures indicate that in the first year following the introduction of the interest rate cap, the stock of credit to MSMEs declined sharply by 10% year-on-year on account of difficulty for banks to price the SMEs within the set margins as they were perceived risky borrowers. According to stakeholders, banks could grow business through credit lines with microfinance banks, which lend to SMEs at rates above 20%. Stakeholders in SACCOs are still pessimistic over what repeal of the rate cap law will do in terms of enabling small businesses access credit.
The excavation of an 11.7-kilometer northern water collector tunnel is complete and the project is expected to be commissioned in June 2020. The construction of the tunnel being implemented in the Athi Water Services Board in Murang'a County is currently at 80% complete.
The project, funded by World Bank among other development partners at a tune of 20 billion, is earmarked to add water volume at Ndakaine Dam, the major source of water for Nairobi City County and its environs. An engineer with the Athi Water Service Board, Alfaksad Kitheku, on Friday told Murang'a County Development Implementation Coordination Committee that the contractor is currently working to complete lining of the tunnel after completion of the excavation works. The tunnel is designed to draw water from 3 rivers within Murang'a County, namely Irati, Maragwa and Gekige. Kitheku said construction of 2 intake weirs at Maragwa and Irati are ongoing, whereas the 3rd intake at River Gekige will commence early next year. The engineer said, and I quote, construction of Irati River intake is at 98% complete and Maragwa River intake weir is at 20%. The project was expected to be complete in December 2019, but due to challenges, the construction works have delayed. He further noted that construction of raw and treated water transmission pipelines from Ndakaine Dam to Kerogo Water Treatment Plant and to Nairobi is ongoing. The engineer observed that 15.5 kilometer out of the total 54 kilometers of pipes have been laid. Kitheku explained that, and I quote, the project aims at conveying raw water from Ndakaine to Kerogo Water Treatment Plant and treated water from Kerogo to Gigiri reservoirs in Nairobi, end of quote. He further noted that laying of the pipes, especially areas between Ndakaine Dam and Kerogo Water Treatment Plant, has faced obstacles as some families objected the compensation given. The engineer said a family moved to court to block the construction of works and the matter is still pending in the court, although we are still proceeding with the work as no injunction was given to halt the works. End of quote. Kitheka said Athi Water Services Board is employing necessary interventions to see that the project is completed and operationalized by mid-next year. The project is set to increase water supply to Nairobi by 140 million litres per day to serve an additional 1.2 million residents. At interception, leaders and activists from Murang'a County opposed the construction of the collector tunnel over concerns that the project was not being implemented as designed. Reporting for Ebro Business, I'm Kaindo Stefano.
On the international front, Boeing confirms it will suspend production of its 737 MAX jetliner next month as the regulators made it clear that they will not approve the jet's return to service by the end of the year. VOA correspondent Mariama Diallo reports on the potential impact of the move.
The move to suspend production of its best-selling 737 MAX came days after the head of the Federal Aviation Administration said no to recertification of the jetliner until possibly sometime next year. That news raised concerns for some workers right before the holidays.
Merry Christmas, right?
For now, the company says there would be no layoffs of its 12,000 employees during the production freeze. Meanwhile, suspending production of a commercial aircraft will have a major impact on multiple levels, analysts say.
Suspending production of a commercial aircraft, and we don't know how long that would be, is really going to create some chaos for the airlines that are involved in this, as well as the 600 or so companies that are part of the 737 MAX supply chain and Boeing itself. It's going to have substantial impact on the U.S. economy, and as it already has, I think, will affect our trade deficit.
Boeing officials say they decided to stop production in part because the FAA declined to certify the aircraft at least until 2020. The 737 MAX had been grounded since March after two separate fatal crashes, one in Indonesia and another one in Ethiopia, that killed nearly 350 people.
Boeing made a lot of missteps starting with the design of the airplane, and there was some early signals that it needed some fixes, and those were missed by lots of people.
Aviation expert Joe Schweiderman says for Boeing, this is going to be a tough juggling act.
This is a core of their operation, the 737 MAX, and you have lots of workers who are trained to do one thing and have them do another thing now. As you try to figure out when you're going to start, it's going to take some fancy footwork.
CEO Dennis Muilenburg had his chairmanship stripped from him because of questionable decisions he made ahead of the two crashes. He also testified before Congress about both incidences.
And I want to convey our absolute commitment to safety, our commitment to learning, our commitment to rebuilding the public's confidence in what we do, and to preventing accidents from like this from ever happening again.
But critics say he's been slow to accept blame for software failures that safety inspectors say contributed to both crashes. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Washington.
Now, welcome to our segment where we highlight the Nairobi Security Exchange highlights. Now, let's take a look at the stock exchange market as of 1:54 p.m. East African time. We do start with the gainers, that is TPS Serena with Kenya shilling 17.60 cents with a percentage of 10%. Now we go to Standard Group Limited, which traded in for Kenya shilling 28 shillings and a percentage of 9.8%. We go to Olympia Capital Holdings, that has traded in for 2 shillings and 20 cents with a percentage of 9.45%. We go to Home Africa Limited, which has traded in for 59 cents with a percentage of 5.36%. And finally, Longhorn Publishers, which traded in for a shillings of 6 shillings and 2 cents with a percentage of 4.88%. Now let's go to the losers. We start with Flame Tree Group Holdings, which traded in for 2 shillings and 35 cents with a percentage downfall of 9.27%. Uchumi with 35 cents and a percentage downfall of 5.41%. We go to HF Group Limited, which has, of course, traded 5 shillings and 66 cents with a percentage downfall of 5.3%. We go to East Africa Cables Limited, which has indeed traded in for 2 shillings and 50 cents with a percentage downfall of 4.58%. Nation Media Group is the last company here in the category of losers with 38 Kenya shillings and 5 cents with a percentage downfall of 3.6%. We go to the movers. Here is Safaricom leading with 3.25 million. Kenya Commercial Bank with 1.56 million, Kenya Re with 625,600, Equity with 557,000, and finally KPLC at 305,100. And that marks the end of our bulletin this afternoon. But of course, the stock exchange continues, the security exchange continues to shift as the days go by. But we'll duly inform you on the latest news, of course, in our subsequent bulletins. My name is Abdiaziz Hashim. Good afternoon for now.